Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we're going to discuss some things to consider and keep in mind during Q4 that we've seen come up from some of our clients that we've addressed as well, and that we think are pretty important. Some of the points that we bring up today could really be something similar that you're dealing with in your business, or maybe make you think of something that you'd like to deal with during the next year. So we always recommend planning ahead, and this goes as in furtherance of the last podcast that we did on budgeting and really preparing next steps. And we always talk about just planning ahead. And so Q4 we find is the best time to do that, because you're really planning some steps for your business moving forward. And what we find is, of course, on my end, a lot of companies are updating their employment documents. They're updating as well their expansion plan and how many employees they expect to have. And so what we find is smaller companies that may have just a few employees may have a plan to expand, double in size, and may need certain policies, which a company under 10 employees by law may not need, but over 10, now they'll be required by law to have certain policies in place. Also, an employee handbook. When you have just a few employees, it's very simple to get around certain policies. But as soon as you have over, I would say, 10 employees, it becomes very difficult to have these as single standing policies. And so it's a good time to start thinking about that from the employment documents point of view, as well as with expansion. Also on expansion, think of a marketing budget. So that would go hand in hand with a budget. If there is going to be a marketing budget in place, think of what would be required for it, if you would have someone in-house, and if you would need any contracts to prepare it for that. Make sure that's part of the budgeting for it as well. We find that there's usually a quote for marketing, but there isn't any consideration for the time spent or necessary to make sure that the contract with the company is negotiated beforehand and that the companies are protected, such as protecting their likeness and so on. Any large investments, we always recommend to plan in Q4 for the future year. Any changes in infrastructure, changes to the place where the business is renting from, or perhaps even purchasing a building or manufacturing plant for the company. That's something we recommend thinking about in Q4 when preparing the budget for the next year. As well as, again, as we talked about, additional hiring, always something to keep in that budget and keep in mind and plan for in Q4, as well as any legal questions that may come up. If there is a large AR, accounts receivable balance, and the company may want to move that into collections. That's something to consider as well in Q4, because that will help you understand what can I expect to earn in the following year, a certain portion of that AR, so it isn't just rolling from year to year. And then if there are any questions or concerns between partners on these investments, we recommend dealing with that in Q4, because if you find that there are certain rolling questions that both parties have been avoiding on purpose, that may be for a reason, and we definitely don't want that to cause an issue down the line. We recommend dealing with that in Q4, and if you find that there may need to be a partner buyout, that's something as well to plan for, to make sure that the business is in a position to be able to deal with any legal questions amongst partners, buyouts, or taking on a new partner and being able to invest in that as well. So those are just a couple of things that we see typically, some recommendations of things to think about in Q4. And I'm going to give this over to Jane now, just to talk about some of the considerations for Q4 from her end.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Irene. Well, one of the, dreaded seasons for accountants is preparation of 1099. So I really want to urge everyone to make sure that you have the W-9s for independent contractors or businesses, and making sure that you kind of tell your bookkeeper, your accountant ahead of time who you are anticipating to receive 1099s. Make sure you review the books with them and make sure we have that information. Also, I urge, but the depositing last minute checks, please consult your accountant before you do so. Also, as Irene was saying, accounts receivable. So we want to kind of look at it and say, okay, are we going to be sending to collections, or we're going to be writing off some of the uncollectible accounts receivable? Also, the cash flow statement, as we spoke about our last podcast. So this is your business's incoming and outgoing cash, and it only shows the actual cash you have, nothing, no credit, right? So tracking it at the year end could help you create a cash flow forecast and predict the future cash flow, as well as kind of closing the year strong, making sure you could kind of estimate your payables, receivables, year-end bonuses are coming up. So it's really important to have that cash on hand. Also, you want to kind of estimate your liability ahead of time as well. So you want to tell your accountant about any major inflow of unexpected income, something like retirement account withdrawals and increases in the self-employment income. So you want to be able that your accountant is calculating your tax liability effectively. So if you have a job, you're expecting to get a W-2. If you have some work that you've been doing, like independent work, 1099s, anything, your investments, K1s. So you want to kind of estimate that so the accountant is giving you the right liability. So you just kind of want to write it down and make sure you're not missing anything, obviously to the best of your ability, but it's really important to kind of concentrate on that. And then I also want to touch on the estimated taxes, which is really important to do that. So we have the quarterly estimated taxes. So the deadline for the first one is April 15th, goes to June 15th, September 15th. And it's important to remember that the Q4 deadline is January 15th of the following year. So again, it goes back to the cash, it goes back to estimating and communicating with your accountant. So we'd like you to leave with that. If you have any more questions, if you have anything about Q4, please don't hesitate to reach out to Irene and I. Thank you.
Thank you.